but we are at 5:35, so we'll make a head start. I'll just start off by saying, thank you guys for registering to the webinar. It's much appreciated. I believe this is our like 6th or 7th webinar now. I've kind of lost count, to be honest, but it's good to just see you guys joining in, and I hope that you guys really get value from this. During the course of the webinar, I'm going to be sure to facilitate a feedback form, and it's really important if you could just take time. It takes like 1 minute to fill this out, but it's important that you just take time to fill it out so you can give us more information on how we can make these webinars better. I appreciate it's not really the most immersive thing, given that it's virtual, but we try and make it as interactive as possible through questions in the chat. With that being said, this webinar today is going to be covering Megan's journey to being a qualified solicitor. I've actually been connected with Megan on Instagram for the best part of a year now. This was at the infancy of Beyond Education, and I feel like we kind of came up together in that realm of everyone kind of setting up a page to help people. And yeah, Megan's platform, It's All Hearsay, has grown exponentially in helping people, access opportunities in law and just providing general guidance on how to navigate the law industry. And with that being said, I'm going to sort of hand it over to Megan to kind of go into a bit more detail and who she is and what we're going to be talking about today.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. So I'm Megan Hume. I go by Meg quite a lot, and I have just finished my training contract. If you don't know what a training contract is, it is something that you usually have to obtain to qualify as a solicitor. I say usually, there's lots of different routes to qualifying as a lawyer, but the traditional route is that you apply for a 2-year training contract, and then at the end of it you apply for a newly qualified role, which is where I'm at now. I have just finished my training contract. I've been qualified for about 2 months, so I have just started my associate role at Mishkondareya. I have qualified into restructuring and insolvency litigation, and it's all very new to me, so I'm working very hard at the moment to try and get up on it. Before this, I went to a non-Russell Group university, and that was the University of Lincoln. And then shortly after that, I had to take part in the LPC, which is like a practical training course that you have to do at some point after university. Sometimes you can get funding for this, but I paid for it myself because it was something that I knew I wanted to do. And that is now being replaced by the SQE. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But I worked as a paralegal after doing the LPC, and then it took me 4 years to get a training contract, which is a very long time. You have to apply for training contracts 2 years in advance. So I tried for many cycles and was very unsuccessful. So that meant that I found myself with a lot of knowledge of the industry, and that's why I started my It's All Hearsay Instagram page, because I wanted to make sure that I could pass back the information that I needed in order to be successful during the training contract application process. I have 28 mentees, and I review CVs and training contracts for free. And yeah, I want to make sure that nobody ever feels alone, because the training contract application process can be very tedious. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it can be quite demoralizing because you get a lot of rejection. So my page was created to offer help, motivation and guidance to all aspiring solicitors.
Nice. And yeah, hopefully we can kind of touch on how maybe you can have the capacity to take on any more mentees, or how people can leverage your platform to get as much help as possible, and also kind of delve into more detailed navigate an application season, especially coming from a non-Russell Group university, because I was actually doing a bit of research into this, and up until recently the legal industry was saturated heavily with people that went to Russell Group universities and Oxbridge. So it's quite it is quite an achievement in itself, being able to navigate getting into the industry and also becoming a solicitor as well, which we can kind of touch on. Moving on to the next slide, if you can kind of just provide a bit more detail on It's All Hearsay, and just give people a bit of insight into where they can follow you and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you. So we create typographic style posts on Instagram. I try and give absolutely everything I know about certain topics to anyone that requires help. So we have a lot of long form posts on there. We do reels to try and keep it fun and entertaining. And we also have a blog where we offer free resources. So there's loads of things on interviews, assessment centres, and also just fun posts that I talk about in terms of study tips and doing well in your academics. I have a free interview guide, which is 39 pages long. It took me the best part of, I think, 6 months to write it, but it includes all of the interview questions that you could possibly be asked in any application cycle, and also provides working examples of how I would answer certain things. So if you take anything away from this session, do go and have a look at that. That will really help you. But yeah, mainly you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, or of course my blog. I have put the link tree in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone can see it if they joined later. Does that work?
Yeah, I
I'm not sure.
believe they
Yeah,
can
you
see
can
like the
still see
previous
it.
history and stuff.
So yeah, if you just scroll up a little bit, my link tree is there, and you can find all of my links and resources in that.
Yeah, sounds good. And guys, like all of these webinars are also on replay as well on our website, on our YouTube page, and we always include all the links to everything. So Megan's platform, all the resources that can help her as well, help you guys as well. So yeah, we'll be sure to facilitate that after the webinar. Again, just a bit of a shameless plug on Beyond Education. We're a platform dedicated to helping individuals access early career opportunities at corporate institutions being finance, professional services, and technology. And this is just because these are the in-demand industries that you guys are really interested in. So we try to leverage our network as much as possible to provide insight into these industries, leveraging our network through people like Megan, who have been kind enough to share their time to really delve into this. And then soon enough, we're also going to be working with employers to really provide actual opportunities for you guys to work in. And what we do is we essentially just provide free career resources. We make career content across our Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And we leverage professionals like Megan to sort of provide professional insight and more in-depth insight into these industries as well. You can sign up to our website, beyondeducation.uk, in order to get the drop on all the things that we're doing to help people access early career opportunities. That's the best place to do it. And if you require one-to-one support, I'm very, very hesitant to say this because we're very much at capacity at the moment. But if you require one-to-one support, you can always drop us an email at info@beyondeducation.uk. But as I said, we're at capacity and the wait list is very, very extensive, and we're actually booked out until the end of 2022. And I guess, one of those reasons is because, we try to offer free career services to anyone that needs it. We don't necessarily believe in students paying for career services, and not knocking anyone that does that, but that's just kind of our legacy and what we kind of want to do. This should be accessible for everyone, and this is something that they should actually teach you in university. So that's why platforms like It's All Hearsay and Beyond Education are kind of here to do that. Moving on to the next slide, Megan, if you just want to cover the agenda for today's session.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about the routes into law. As I touched on right at the beginning, there's quite a few different ways you can enter the profession, but there is one traditional route that does stand out. I'm very glad that there are new ways entering the market, and they're becoming much more popular because in terms of social mobility and the access to the industry, it's really, really helpful, because it means that there's a lot of people coming in from a lot of diverse backgrounds. We're going to be talking about top tips for pursuing a career, what kind of skills you need to have, and how to utilize the work experience that you may have or get in terms of pursuing a career in law. I'm going to talk about my day-to-day tasks and what I do every day as a lawyer, and how that changes in different departments. And then, yeah, we'll have a Q&A, and hopefully there'll be lots of questions that I can answer.
Nice. All right, then I'll hand it over to you, Meg.
Great, thank you. So there are three main routes into law. So you could go to university if you wanted to. You can study law or non-law. It really doesn't matter what you do at this stage. And I think that's a really nice thing about a career in law. You could obviously go to university and establish a law degree and learn a couple of topics there, but it's by no means the only way of doing so. And you could do a degree in business if you wanted to, history, politics, geography, and then there's a route later on where you can convert your degree into a legal career, which I think is great because it means that there are lots of people that can add extra value to the conversation, have different skills and knowledge about different sectors, and that all plays really nicely into being a lawyer. There is no disadvantage other than the fact it adds on 1 extra year if you were going to do it this way. In hindsight, even though I did a law degree, I would have actually preferred to do a business degree. I think it would have been much more beneficial for me in terms of learning lots of practical skills. But obviously hindsight is a beautiful thing, and I don't regret what I did. So either route is absolutely fine. And if you have already been through university, that's even better. We have a lot of career changes that come into the profession, and it's really nice that law firms are so susceptible of different routes, because it does mean that when you are interacting within a team and you are having great conversations in terms of what you need to do, the next steps, there's lots of people that think outside the box and not just technically. So I really don't think it matters at all. And particularly after university, law firms usually take 50% law student, 50% non-law student into training contracts. So you can see that there's a very fair split. Another route is apprenticeships, and this is usually a 6-year route. It means that as soon as you finish A levels and sixth form, you go straight into work, and you do your studying alongside your job, which can be quite hard, and I think a lot of people do struggle, but it's a fantastic way of getting no debt and getting the experience on the job straight away. Obviously, if you go to university, they're usually 3 years, so you have to wait 3 years before you're even earning your salary, and of course you take away student loans and things. So an apprenticeship is becoming the new way to enter the profession, and I really rate it. I think it's so fantastic. The people that have done apprenticeships tend to be way more technical than I am, and I'm qualified. Like, they know way more than I do because they've had the experience from such an early age, whereas I've had to do the studying and then come into the profession. And a lot of the time you forget about what you do on your degree, and because you can't apply it when you're learning the theory, it means it's much harder to kind of learn that when you are here, because you have to refresh yourself on the content constantly. So they are kind of the 2 main routes, apprenticeships becoming more popular, but there is also the Silex route, and this route tends to be done when you are maybe a legal secretary or a PA, and you've decided that you do actually want to do legal work. You can then qualify that way. Often you can do it as a paralegal. It means that you can again learn on the job, and you have to do certain assessments and exams and fill out a diary to set out what kind of work you have done. So these are all fantastic different routes, and there's, as I say, no disadvantage to either one. It's just that the university route does tend to be the most traditional. Once you've finished these stages, you then go on to do the LPC. If you've done a law degree, that is the legal practice course, and that is just a 1-year intensive course where you learn more of the practical skills, things like going to court, doing advocacy, negotiation, everything that is kind of not the theory based. However, the LPC is now being replaced by the SQE. This was a very welcomed overhaul of the LPC because it was very rigid in its approach. It costs a lot of money. I think it's about £17,000, and if you can't get funding, then that's a really, really hard thing to fund, particularly as it's so intensive that you can't work alongside it. That didn't stop me, however, though. I worked as a paralegal part-time because I love being put under pressure.
You just
But it
love
does,
stress.
I do. But yeah, it was really welcomed, and it meant that people from disadvantaged backgrounds that obviously couldn't front that kind of cost can now come into the market a lot easier. But having
Nice.
said that, the SQE is now seeing lots of teething problems. It's in its very early stages. The first cohort has just finished it. I think there's something like a 50% pass rate, and there is still some really, really shocking percentages for people from ethnic minorities. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
And what would you say is the reason for that? Like, you know, when it comes to teething problems, because I appreciate obviously it's in its infancy, so I guess the syllabus is still being developed. But as far as like, you know, sort of barriers for ethnic minorities
Mm,
being able to kind of navigate that,
mm.
in your opinion, I guess it's a bit speculative, but what do you think are the issues there?
So the main difference between the two is that the LBC is assessment based, and you also do assignments. So everything's staggered throughout the year. However,
Mhm.
the SQE is split into two courses, and they are super exams. It's a bit more like the bar course in the American system now,
Okay.
where you have to study, and then at the end you do all of your topics within the same couple of days, and they are multiple choice questions, so not essay questions, or anything that you can kind of elaborate on. And I
Yeah.
think that is a big difference in the fact that multiple choice questions often try and trick you. They're so similar that it's very hard to distinguish the right answer. There might be two that are fairly accurate,
Yeah.
but it's quite hard to distinguish. And I think the problem is that if you haven't gone to university, which you don't need to do now for the SQE, or you're not very academic, then it's
Mm,
quite difficult, or at least if you are academic, it's hard to switch into this different way of thinking so early on.
yeah.
Um, and again, there's prep courses that you can pay for. So what I think the difference is that if you still have a bit of money, people are paying for those prep courses and are doing well, in terms of those that are from a socially mobile background, or perhaps, just don't have the support system to be able to do all this extra studying alongside working and stuff. So there's still, yeah, quite a few things that need to be ironed out in that regard.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting insight, to be honest, because I must admit, like, I'm really not, I guess, like, and this is one of the reasons why, like, I was so eager to do a session like this, because a lot of candidates reach out to me and like, I want to secure training contracts.
Mm,
And it's a very traditional route to go down. And
mm.
I respect the fact that there's so much steps into it and so many intricacies. So it's like really interesting to kind of hear insights like that, because then it just reaffirms that I really don't know that much.
Exactly.
So
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there is so many nuances to all these different steps. And I mean, the SQE has left a lot of students in limbo because firms haven't implemented them into their training contracts. Technically, if you are ready to do the SQE, you actually shouldn't do the SQE now, because by the time firm implement it, then they will be asking you to do the SQE as part of the training contract. And if you've already done it, then you're going to disrupt their program. So
Yeah.
there's like this sense of, do I do the SQE now? Do I try and apply for training? Like
Yeah.
yes,
So
our
yeah.
yeah, our regulation authority has not done a very good job at implementing this.
Mm.
So hopefully it will all sort itself out quite quickly.
Yeah,
But
still a
yeah,
lot of teething issues, I guess. But then I
yeah,
guess like there's a benefit of saying that, you know, at least they've kind of just put something out there that looks like a workaround in
mm,
comparison to the LPC, because I guess they could have spent a lot of time developing it, but then
yeah.
there'll be a lot of people that still can't access the legal profession
Yeah,
because
so
of the costliness
another
of
reason why
LPC.
it was brought in is for flexibility. So the second part of the SQE is that you can do qualifying work experience. So you can actually qualify through being a paralegal, which is a lot less competitive than trying to find a training contract.
Mm,
So there are definitely some benefits of that, and it means that you have a bit more control, because you could do four sets of 6 months and qualify, rather than having to just do 2 years at one institution. So it does give a bit more power back to the people that are taking it. But yeah, it's not working too well at the moment.
fair enough. Well, I digress. If you can progress
Yeah,
with the
I was going to say I
GDL,
could
yeah.
talk about this for an hour in itself. So
Sorry.
um so if you've done a law degree, you do the LPC/the SQE, depending on which way you pick. The SQE was mandatory from 2032, so it's still quite a long way away. But if you haven't done a law degree, you do the GDL, which was the extra year course that I was talking about, and then you would do the LPC or the SQE. But again, this is kind of been replaced by SQE1. It's very complicated, but essentially, if you have qualified university already, then you should be doing the SQE. And if you have already applied for the LPC or the GDL, then you will do the GDL LPC rather than just the SQE.
Distance.
Yes. So once you've finished all that and you've got your training contract, then you also do the PSC, which is like a practical skills course, which is kind of an extension of the LPC. So many different acronyms, and you do this usually during your training contracts, and the firm will apply a pay for you to do that. But it's more about drafting witness statements, giving evidence, experts, that kind of thing. The more technical stuff that you would expect to do as a lawyer rather than as a law student.
Mhm.
And that's that. So I've touched on the qualifying work experience, which is part of the SQE, and then obviously the training contract is the 2-year course that I have just completed. So these are the routes, obviously quite complicated, but when you know what you're doing, they are straightforward, and it is very set.
Nice, nice. I guess one more question just on this. So, you know, like you kind of elaborated on like the different routes, right, to get into law. One being traditional, just going through university, which is like very common and standard for a lot of
Yeah.
people. But you know, given like the apprenticeship route now, right, it's very kind of early on into the corporate world as a young professional. Like, how would you like who would you recommend that for? Right, like because it's very like important to kind of discern the kind of person you need to be to kind of maybe enter the workforce at such a young age.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. You obviously have to be quite sure of yourself. Coming into a corporate environment at such a young age can really kind of beat you up a lot. You know, a lot
Mhm.
of it is expected of you. It's very fast paced, can be quite stressful. But I really do think this is a fantastic way to get into law. You get so much experience early on. You really get to find out whether this is the right area for you, because you do so many different practice areas. If you were to go to university and then do a training contract, you only get 4 different seats, whereas on an apprenticeship route, I think you can get up to 6. So there is the added benefit there. And also then the firm pays for your education. They'll pay for you to go to university to do the SQE or the LPC. So I think it's quite a difficult market to navigate at an early age, but I don't think anyone should be put off that a lot less is expected of you than when you'd be on a training contract. Everyone is very supportive. Law firms are very good at making sure that there's an early careers team that can look after you and answer any questions. You're given like a buddy to look after you, a mentor. There's loads of fantastic schemes to make sure that everything is going smoothly. So while it can be quite a demanding industry, I think it's probably the best way to enter the market, really, even if you are very young and kind of inexperienced, because it's meant to help you in all of those areas.
Noted, noted. Moving on to the next slide on top tips.
Okay, so top tips. I've touched on a couple of the skills just then that you have to have, because obviously it's a demanding industry, but networking is the best thing you can possibly do. And I know this is such a cliche thing to say, and everyone bangs on about networking, but as a lawyer, you are not taught marketing skills, and you really need them. A lot of that comes from your own personal brand. You need to be known within the industry to be, one, reliable, two, flexible, but also to be fantastic at your job. And if you're not publicizing what you're doing, or you don't have a network that you can share this with, and you've not got connections that can talk about what you've done to other people, then you're going to kind of stagnate. And it's so important as a junior, because I have had so many opportunities open to me from networking. I got my first paralegal role from just complaining on LinkedIn. I sent out a bit of a ranty post saying that I'd had good academics, I'd tried really hard, I'd done everything like the textbook had asked me to do in terms of entering the profession, but I was still finding it incredibly difficult to find a job. And a partner at a firm just commented saying, "Would you like to have an interview with me?" And I got a job, and that was my foot in the door. And it just goes to
Right.
show how important utilizing these platforms are. And as a junior, you need to be able to push this into a law firm, particularly when you have lots of old traditional partners that do not understand all of this stuff. It makes you look really impressive. And if you've got these skills already and a great network to work from, then you're really going to be able to accelerate yourself once you get in there. In terms of legal work experience, this is one of the most important things you can do in terms of trying to get a training contract. It is very hard to come by, but there are lots of things like volunteering. You can go and sit in at court hearings. A lot of them are open to the public. You can get a lot of great legal knowledge from them. You can also meet solicitors and barristers there. And if you show your face a lot, you might be able to gain some work experience, such as shadowing them or maybe marshalling for the courts. So really try hard to see what's out there. Send speculative applications to local law firms, and just reach out to anyone that is in within the industry. I was the first gen to go to university in my family. I didn't have any legal contacts whatsoever. So this was something I really had to build up, but I really did use LinkedIn as much as I could. And it really helped to find these kind of opportunities that I exampled. So try and find legal work experience as much as you can, and do a variety of it in order to really understand what law firms want, what businesses need, how they interact with their clients, and stay competitive. But having said that, it's not the be all and end all. Having commercial experience such as working in retail or hospitality will really, really help to find transferable skills. I worked at Nando's for 5 years, and I put the most weight on that in terms of it building up my work ethic, being able to deal with lots of different types of customers, dealing with customer complaints, working under pressure, liaising in a team, showing leadership skills. There's such fantastic skills you can build from non-legal work experience, so try not to focus too much on that, even though it's very important.
Mhm.
I've touched on personal branding. That is something that you need to have. If people know that you're good at your job and they know that you're going to do a good job time and time again, you're going to find that lots of work comes your way, lots of opportunities, and that's going to really help for establishing a really great career for you. Business acumen is something I think anyone within the corporate world needs. Again, it's just about understanding what makes a firm profitable, how they stay competitive, what their stakeholders are looking for. So
Mm.
again, getting outside and doing real life, real world experience, such as, for example, working in Nando's, will really help you to build this up. Often as well, working in an office environment, even just learning how to write emails, to print, to how to speak to people that are above you in the rankings, is all really, really important. So making sure that you are professional, you dress well, of course, obviously not a priority, but helps you to, I always say, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. I mean, it just helps you to look great outwardly. And yeah, just make sure that you're communicating always in a professional way in terms of all social media, anyone that you meet, and really, yeah, make sure that you've learned and drilled in this acumen into everything that you do and like your core values.
Of course.
I think the best thing a lawyer needs is resilience and discipline. The industry is very hard and it isn't for everyone, but having knockbacks is unavoidable. You are going to be rejected. You're going to find yourself in difficult situations. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. And I think that's a really hard skill to learn and accept. Rejection has made me into the lawyer that I am today. And even though I found it very difficult to bounce back when I was very young, it really does help you to build a thick skin. And while that sounds sometimes quite negative, I really enjoy the fact that I have been through a journey and I've got to where I am. And it means that I can literally brush off anything that happens to me, even in the real world, in terms of personal circumstances. So resilience is a key skill that you really do need to have, because you'll just come against challenges quite a lot. And if you have the necessary skills to defeat that time and time again, you're going to thrive so well. And then, of course, discipline. You have to be quite academic. You have to be very organized. You've got to stick to a routine. At the moment, I am using discipline to make sure that I have a great work-life balance, that I can still participate in these kind of events while alongside working. You know, I really am passionate about my extracurriculars. I love spending time with my friends, and I am absolutely not going to jeopardize that in any means. So making sure I have the discipline in order to make sure I've got boundaries, but also keep myself in check, make sure I'm not wasting time on unnecessary things, is really important and will help you to do well. And then finally, entrepreneurialism. You have to be creative. You've got to think outside the box. Lawyers tend to be very straight, very forward in their thinking, and don't tend to come up with innovative solutions. However, the talent that is being retained by law firms are now showing these kind of new ways of thinking. So if you can develop this and show that you can create solutions to problems, think about different ways lawyers can automate their processes, how you can use technology to your advantage, is going to really help you to stand out and also to have a very successful career. So these are the top tips that I would definitely use if you are thinking about pursuing a career in law.
Noted. No, thank you for that. I didn't want to like ruin your flow, so I just wanted you to kind of
Thank
get through
you.
all of them. But yeah, I guess like, all great points. And someone kind of asked, how do you actually network effectively? And I have a couple of views on this, but yeah, maybe you can kind of have a stab at it. And I also just realized as well that we actually weren't even connected on LinkedIn, which for some weird reason I
Oh.
thought we were. So I literally just connected with you now. But yeah, like just random one. But yeah.
No, I didn't realize either. Obviously, I saw that you tagged me in some posts, so yeah,
Yeah.
I should have. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you. In terms of networking effectively, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It feels quite hard to reach out to people a lot of the time because we don't want our egos to be bruised, and also we kind of think that we're not valuable, or that we shouldn't have somebody's time of day. But the best way you can utilize that is to reach out to people in high positions. I think don't be afraid to reach out to partners at law firms that you're interested in. Obviously, start small. Try and find juniors like trainees or people that are going through the process or have been through the process recently, such as myself, and ask them loads of questions. Just start at the basics of finding out what it is that you enjoy, and what it is that you're interested in, then start targeting these partners. Some partners will absolutely ignore you. Fair play. I mean, they're probably very busy, but partners are not in ivory towers and cannot be contacted. A lot of them these days are very approachable, particularly at some of the good firms that have great culture, and will give you so many valuable tips. I've definitely kind of bit the bullet and gone way out my comfort zone, and taken a chance, and I've got lots of fantastic reward in return. So I message people really on LinkedIn as a starting point, and make sure you have questions that are appropriate to the person that you're targeting. Don't ask, say, a lawyer about the HR side of things or what recruitment processes they have. They're not going to know. If you can find a personal link to the things that they've done recently. So I go back to LinkedIn all the time, but you could follow them and you could see what they're sharing and liking and what they are commenting on, and try and flag something with them. Say, oh, I've seen that you've recently commented on this article. I really enjoyed the comment that you set out XYZ. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Would you mind jumping on a call with me for just 15 minutes so that we could talk a little further? Anything like that is so fantastic, and you will find that people will respond to you if you can show that you've got a genuine interest in them, as well as what you want to gain from them, not just going straight in and be like, tell me about this. So you've got to play to people's egos, and try and show them that you are genuinely interested in what they do, and you're not just out there to try and get something out. And I've just seen that you've asked a further question about being annoying. I think, again, that's trying to forget about what it is that we've had drilled into us from a young stage. Like, be annoying. You should absolutely be annoying when you are a junior. If you're not annoying, then you're not learning and you're not pushing yourself hard enough. As long as you are polite and respectful of people's time, you should be as annoying as you possibly can. Be repeative, repeat things to them, ask them as many questions as you can, even the silly ones, because otherwise you're not going to get the benefit, and that is something that just will hold you back. So I am a big fan of being annoying. I think it's actually really helpful if somebody is annoying, because I know where I stand with them. I've answered everything that I possibly can, and I've helped them in every way. And the worst thing that can happen is if you are really annoying, they stop responding to you. And if they're not somebody that you're trying to target, or somebody that you really admire, and obviously you are just trying to gain knowledge on the industry, so what, let them think that you're annoying. I think you have to take
Yeah.
every advantage that you can. And as I say, as long as you're being polite, then I think there's no harm in making sure you ask all your questions.
No, yeah, of course. And I think just to kind of like jump on that as well, with networking, specifically reaching out to people on LinkedIn, I think what we need to understand as well is that no one is obliged to reply to you. So with that being said, a lot of people are going to ignore you. And frankly speaking, there are a lot of people in my DMs at the moment. And just because of the capacity and like work that I'm doing at the moment, I don't have time to respond to them. And that's just how it is, you know. But at the end of the day, I think you just kind of have to be smart in like the way you reach out to people and who you reach out to. So I found that, you know, I get a better response rate if I reach out to people that are more active on LinkedIn, for example. So, you know, reaching out to a partner that like his last post was in 2 years, it looks like he probably doesn't use LinkedIn that much. However, if you reach out to an associate who's just an advocate for his career, he's kind of like, you know, the vocal person. So for example, reaching out to someone like Meg, who's literally always speaking about like, you know, her journey and like, you know, qualifying as a solicitor and so much and so on and so forth, you're more likely to get a response from that person that's a lot more active. So I think that's kind of a way to optimize your response rate. And then I would also say, another way to kind of like network outwardly is just being vocal on LinkedIn, you know. So Meg kind of alluded to the fact that she kind of did a rant about how she was trying to navigate this industry and she couldn't just get in, and that was what landed her an interview. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people think that to post on LinkedIn, you have to be like some content creator or influencer. No, you just have to post. You actually just have to post. LinkedIn is not limited to personal branding gurus and influencers and content creators. It is there for everyone to post. So I think it's just about, you know, understanding that there's like various different ways to kind of network, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be reaching out to people. It can also be just you actually like, you know, going on LinkedIn and posting about the industry, posting about your struggles, posting about something that you saw recently. So I think it's just important to kind of like recognize that.
I would just add as well, obviously we've talked about LinkedIn quite a lot, but just showing up to events is more than enough in terms of networking. You actually don't have to do any of these things to be successful at networking. Just going to events, showing your face and being somebody that, you know, is there at certain things time and time again will do you just as many favors as being active on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you can do both at the same time, then you're going to have maximum results. But yeah, just try not to worry too much. I think, as you said, you don't need to be an influencer or a content creator to post on LinkedIn. You don't even have to post on LinkedIn, but as long as you're present in the industry that you're targeting and you're getting yourself out there, you'll be successful. So yeah, that is.
Perfect. Moving on to you know, just giving us a bit of insight into what your days look like.
Yeah, okay. So I try and have a routine. My diary is stacked. It's time blocked as much as I possibly can in order to make sure that I am being effective. I was just saying at the beginning of the call, I haven't actually done any work for the last 3 hours because I've had so many meetings. They've been back to back. And sometimes things gets given to you at the last minute. You have to be flexible, and even though I love to be organized and it really does help me to make sure I'm allocating enough time to certain things, it doesn't always work like that. So no one day is the same. You will have lots of different things on every single day. For today, as I said, I've got lots of meetings, but tomorrow I actually have no meetings, which is great. So it means I need to crack on with my work. All of my matters are so different, which is great. It keeps it exciting, entertaining. I'm always interested in the stuff that I do. But generally, I do a lot of drafting. I have to review lots of documents. I talk to my clients on a daily basis. We have lots of strategy meetings. There's lots of contact with the partners. In my team, the juniors run the matters, which is great. So it means I have a lot of responsibility, but I have to make sure that I'm keeping up to date with what's going on. I need to have lots of to-do lists and ensure that, yeah, everything is progressing nicely. You
And
obviously have to, oh, go on.
And Meg, just sorry to interject, could you just give people a bit of context into like, you know, what seat you're on? What do you mean by matters? And, you know, how does that
Yeah, of
come through
course.
the
So obviously I'm qualified in restructuring and insolvency litigation, which at the moment means that we advise insolvency practitioners once a company goes into administration or liquidation. This is like a small part of it. But we end up, once the liquidators have gone in and had a look at the books and records, sometimes they see problems that have happened while the company was active. For example, if a director knew that they were about to go insolvent and they started dissipating assets, moving money around, paying creditors that they shouldn't have, then we do a lot of investigatory work. And it means that we have to ensure that there was no fraudulent activity, no wrongful trading. Maybe there's been some breach of directors' duties. We might have to look into disqualifying directors. And it's a lot of contentious stuff that happens once a company goes into administration or liquidation. A lot of time there is fraud, and it means that we then have to instruct other parts of the firm. And it's quite juicy sometimes, it's quite exciting. We get to review a lot of fun documents. We get to piece together arguments. So when I say matters, I have lots of different cases. So there'll be different varieties of the things that I've said. So I'll be working on different stages of each of those matters. So for example, at the moment, our big matter is in disclosure. It means that we are preparing the documents that we're going to disclose on the other side. So we're using a big system called relativity. And it means that we have to go through and tag up certain documents to different issues, different arguments that we want to make. We have to weed out all the non-relevant stuff. We have to make sure that we're checking to see whether anything's privileged or not. So there's lots of big work streams that I am running and on. And as I say, each matter is at different stages. So lots and lots of variety. Does that help? Did that answer what you
Yeah,
asked?
no, definitely. It provides a bit more context then. So I guess like you being like a qualified associate at the moment, obviously you're kind of still like introduced into I guess the realm of being qualified, right? So you mentioned that the senior associates are the ones kind of managing a relationship with the clients. How's that dynamic like, how do you kind of navigate getting exposure to clients or getting a bit more insight into like, that relationship with clients?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because my next little bullet point is business development. And this is a big part of being a lawyer. It goes back to the marketing stuff that I was talking about. As a junior, especially when you finish your training contract, you're now kind of set in one team for a little while. You do have to start building your profile with clients and intermediaries. And you do get a lot of client contact, and you get thrown into it quite quickly, and you have to build up that relationship. Somebody said to me recently, I did it in a post on It's All Hearsay, I said this: when I joined the team, my partner said to me, they don't know whether you're 1 year qualified, 3 years qualified, or that you're a senior associate, that you've been here for 10 years. Your client expects you to know what to do, and that's quite a big thing. It feels like a lot of pressure coming into this stage. My training wheels have come off, so I am having to reach out to the senior associates for guidance and direction, and make sure that I am doing a lot of research to make sure that I'm giving the correct advice, and that, yeah, I am making sure that I'm doing a good job for the clients. But you get so much contact, you end up having phone calls unexpectedly with clients, and you can build up that relationship through doing business development, such as writing articles for the firm so that they know that you have expertise in certain areas, taking clients out for drinks and lunches, meeting with intermediaries, so people like councils, and other like forensic accountants we often have as our intermediaries. So making sure that they know who you are within the team and what you do is really important for that exposure.
Noted, noted. And like, I appreciate that you just recently qualified, but have you been in instances where you've kind of like made a mistake, or like you've kind of been, had a bit of anxiety about something that you've done that's like gone wrong, and like, you're in way over your head, or you're a bit overwhelmed? Like, could you kind of give us insight into that and how you've been able to navigate it?
Yeah, so touch wood. So far being qualified, I haven't yet made any mistakes. But it really does happen much more than people think. As a trainee, I made so many mistakes, such as like sending emails to the wrong person, breaching confidentiality by attaching a document that was not meant to be seen by somebody, missing a court deadline. That happens all the time because you have to be so on the ball about making sure that things are diarised and stuff. But you know what? If you're in the right firm, then there's absolutely no problem if you make a mistake.
Mhm.
Um, the one thing you have to do is make sure that you tell somebody straight away so that it can be rectified as soon as possible. If you don't do that, then it actually gets worse and worse. The consequences become way more severe. So you have to hold your hands up very quickly. But honestly, like my team, I know full well if I was to make a mistake in my team, they may be a bit disappointed for about an hour, but they'd quickly pitch in to help me get it sorted, for it to be resolved. I think people think that lawyers are not very supportive, but I see my colleagues, especially now, as friends, and I know that I could ask them for help whenever I needed it. So um, I feel very comfortable making mistakes. I think it's the best way to learn, in all honesty, because you end up not making it again. Um, whereas, and you know what to do when things go wrong. So I think try not to be afraid of mistakes. But luckily, I haven't actually made any mistakes as a qualified lawyer yet, but I'm sure I will.
Fingers
Nobody's
crossed,
perfect.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Well, no, thank you for the insight. We'll just move on to Q&A. A few people have kind of sent questions in, and I appreciate that. We're both still in the office at this time, so
Yeah.
but the first question that someone said might be a silly question, but do you do the LPC during the training contract or before?
Before, yeah. So if you were to secure a training contract, and it was 2 years in advance and you hadn't yet done the LPC, then the firm would sponsor you for that. They would pay for you to do the LPC, and sometimes they give you a grant so that you get some money to live off while doing that. I didn't secure a training contract before I did the LPC. I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, so I wanted to get it out the way, and I had to work part-time to fund the LPC. So I did that while alongside applying for training contracts. And then when I got a training contract, because I had done the LPC and I was ready to go, they actually moved me up a year. So
Nice.
as I said, yeah, you usually apply 2 years in advance. So sometimes you end up waiting for 2 years if you don't have the LPC to fill one of the years. But as I had done the LPC, I just had to wait a year, and I just carried on paralegaling, and then I started pretty much straight away. Sometimes if you finish the LPC, then they make you start that same autumn, so it can really speed things up if you take on the LPC yourself, but obviously you've got the costs associated with that. But no, if you get a training contract, you'll do that in the year before you start, and hopefully the firm will fund it for you.
Got you. And then another question I had was, so, I'm kind of like speaking to a member from Beyond Education who is currently, she's working in CSR at
Okay.
Herbert Smith's, but she wants to go down the law route, right? And she's applying for training contracts. And she was kind of just going into a lot of detail about how the training contract applications are really hard. So I was wondering if you could just take us through like a high level step-by-step of how, like what does a training contract application look like basically, and how to
Yeah.
navigate it?
So a training contract application is different for every firm. They usually have an application form that you start with, and you would have to put in all your work experience, your academics, and you will have to answer a set of questions. Usually it's maybe like 3 to 5 questions, and they vary things such as why this firm, tell us about what practice areas you're interested in, and then into more like competency style questions. Sometimes they ask you like, tell us about a time that you've worked in a team, or tell us about a news article you've read recently and why it's interesting to you. And they also give you usually a space for like extracurriculars and things that you are interested in, so they can get an insight into your personality. That takes quite a long time, because I would expect somebody to spend about a month on each application. So obviously, if
Wow.
you're applying to a lot of different firms, that's really going to rack up your time.
Mm,
Once you have submitted your application, this is when it kind of splits off into other areas. So some firms will ask you to do a Watson Glaser test, which is a critical thinking test. You have to move quickly through different scenarios and answer questions as to whether something is probable, false, true, those kind of things.
yeah.
Usually multiple questions. I hated them, stayed away from them, so never applied to a firm that had them. Other firms will get you to a video interview where you have to answer a set of questions under time constraints to see how
Mhm.
you can handle pressure and getting flustered. Other firms will progress you straight to an assessment centre. Assessment centers are usually a build-up of different scenarios. You might have a written exam, which is usually like proofing something or having a go at writing an email, nothing too strenuous. You might have a negotiation or a presentation. There's lots of teamwork built into it so they can see how you can operate with your colleagues if you were to be a lawyer. And then you often have a final interview.
Mm,
Sometimes you can apply for vacation schemes, which is like a 2-week usually work experience where you get to come into the firm and you get given real life work and you get to liaise with lots of different teams and departments, see what's going on and see if it's for you. But also obviously you're assessed to see whether you'd be a good candidate. And then you'd probably have a final interview with a partner as the very last stage. So it does really vary. The firm that I am at now, but wasn't at. I didn't do my training contract here. I've come back to it. I did do the training contract application. It was actually unsuccessful, which is quite funny because I've now made my way back here anyway.
mm.
That was 8 stages.
Wow.
I got to the final stage and then they didn't give it to me, which was very devastating.
Do you think that's
But
necessary? Do you think the 8 stages is actually
no,
necessary?
absolutely not. No, it's just because the competition can be so high that they need to
Mm.
be able
They
to
need
have
to
a
filter
fair,
out, yeah.
yeah, they need to filter it out, and obviously it needs to, yeah, you need to be put through your paces essentially. And then, but the firm that I did get the training contract at, they only had 3 stages. So it really
Mm.
does differ, and you just have to do a bit of research to see what it is each firm does.
Got you, got you. Just moving on quickly through the questions because they're actually kind of racking up. Hi, I'm Kashish from India. I'm a journalism and mass communication graduate. I'm planning to do a GDL in September 2023, and I want to know how I can secure a scholarship at University of Law for GDL. Like, what kind of profile do you usually want? So that's one question. And is the University of Law really good for GDL, or is there any other universities?
Okay.
And basically, what should I keep in mind basically while
I,
getting
yeah,
the
don't really
GDL?
know too much about scholarships, but I think it is just an application, and you just have to show, why you're interested in law and what it is that you're going to offer to the scheme is my best tip for that. And I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't know too much. I would advise giving the career services team a call and see if there's anything else that you need to put in there. But then in terms of what provider to use, luckily for GDLs and LPCs, there aren't really much different. In fact, there's kind of no difference in between each provider. They do things slightly differently, but in terms of reputation or, what law firms perceive the providers to do doesn't change. So the University of Law I went to do my LPC, and really recommend it. There's BPP, there is Barbary Law, and there's like College of Practical Law, I believe. But I wouldn't say that there's anything different between them at all. So yeah, the University of Law is a good place to do your GDL. Was that all of the questions?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. You don't know much about scholarships.
No.
University of Law is a great one to do your GDL and call in the applications team basically. I would also kind of say just a shameless plug. I watched this YouTuber called Liam Porritt, and he actually
He's
did
really good. Yeah.
he's really good, and he did the GDL. So he kind of has a bit of content around like him doing the GDL. I think he studied like languages or something and then like ended
Yeah.
up doing the GDL. So maybe look around that, like maybe there's some information there that you can kind of leverage. I'm conscious that we have 5 minutes left, so if we can provide the most high level answers to some of
Okay.
these questions. So what skills can one build on in order to pivot to a career in law from a business school background?
Oh my goodness. What skills? Okay, so oh my gosh.
It's all right.
Negotiation. I think obviously you've probably seen a lot of business interactions, using those to your advantage. Law is business. It is fundamentally business. All of your clients do business. You need to understand business. So being able to talk on the things that you have been able to see, and the skills that you've built on, is so transferable, and is a lot of the time what lawyers and general law applicants don't have. So anything you can pinpoint that has been useful for you now will be useful as a lawyer. So just trying to turn those scenarios into why it will help you to understand your clients, how to make businesses successful, what it means to be a good businessman will, yeah, really help you to make your applications.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I think you covered this one before, but how much is the LPC approximately?
I think it's around £17,000 total. I think it does differ slightly from different providers. If you haven't done a postgraduate course, you can get £10,000 of that funded. So the rest you can do through obviously monthly installments or trying to fund it through a part-time job. It is a big commitment, and it is obviously a lot for some people, but if you can do it and you haven't got a training contract, then it is a step in the right direction, and hopefully it will put you on the right path. So lots of pros and cons to each way of doing it.
Noted. A couple of people just dropped questions in terms of how to go about like getting you as a mentor, if that's possible, how to do that.
Yeah, so I have a application process at the beginning of each cycle. Each cycle starts around the end of summer, so about August, September.
What a typical lawyer, like such a lawyer.
But I have already had a lot of success with my mentees already with getting assessment centres, vacation scheme. Somebody might already have a training contract, so we might have some spaces coming up. So please do feel free to drop me a DM on Instagram, and I'll put you on our waiting list. And hopefully we can get a few more people on the scheme before the end of the cycle.
Nice, guys. You can scroll up to the chat. Her link tree is there, so you guys can go onto all her platforms to secure that.
I
As
did
I said,
just have a direct message that has come to me that I'll answer if that's okay.
yeah, go for it.
Somebody said starting my training contract in February, congratulations. And they would love to know what to expect on the PSC. The PSC is the best part, I think, about doing a training contract. It's actually really annoying because you do get some an assignment after your session. But it isn't too much. But essentially, you will have certain modules which will take place over a certain day. At the beginning, usually you have like a 2-week intensive course where you just do the PSC as part of your induction when you start at a law firm. You don't really need to expect much. There is one exam which is like the finance and business exam, which is pretty tough. You have to you learn a lot in a really small amount of time, and then you usually get the exam like the next day or something, or 2 days after. So it feels very, very intense. However, I have never known somebody to fail it, and I think that says it all. I think they like to just say, hey, here's a really hard exam, learn loads of stuff, do the exam. I didn't answer, I think, 20 marks worth of questions and still passed. So while it is really hard and you have to learn a lot of information in a very small amount of time, don't be worried by it. I don't think there's any possible way that you could fail. I think it's more of a tick box exercise. So it's just a lot of listening. There's a few interactive activities that you have to do. But generally, it is just a bit of a DOS. You get to network with some of your cohort, and then you do a couple of extra days throughout your training contract at various points. But it's not very hard at all, and it is just like a day out of work. So it can be quite fun, and you can go for drinks because you finish at 4 p.m.
Happy
on
days.
most days. Yeah, so it's good.
Happy days. Well, guys, it's 6:30 now. There's still a couple questions here, and I feel like these are questions that can be answered on Megan's platform. Questions like, how do you approach like a commercial law question, or how do you approach the application? So I'm sure if you navigate her page, you'll be able to find that. But again, this webinar will be available on our website, hopefully before the end of the week. So you guys can access all the links and all the resources as well. So yeah, with that being said, guys, we'll end it here, and thank you all for tuning in and being
Thank
interactive and
you.
asking
Yeah,
questions.
feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I do try and answer all of the questions that I get. Even if it takes me a couple of months to get back to you, I do tend to go through my inbox. So feel free to ask anything else if you want to. But
Nice,
thanks for
nice.
attending.
Thank you so much, Megan, for joining.
Cool. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
No problem. Bye, guys.